Hey guys, welcome back to Player Level 4. We've got a really exciting episode today. We're going to go over all the new previews, plus we got a brand new preview to view, hopefully taking your game to the next level. Spoiler, so does this card. First off, we've got Mike covering Thundersoar. Very first card spoiling. Mike, why don't you tell us what you think?
Well, first of all, Kit, I don't want to... I know you've been dying to say this. This card has the biggest badonkadonk.
No!
Beat you to it.
Of anything that we have seen so far. Essentially, just to go over, it's a legendary that wasn't necessarily clear when it was first spoiled. It's breakthrough at all levels, 012, 024, 036, and gains attack power based on the damage that has been dealt to it. It's a card that has very low depreciation. It will trade evenly or better with an 11/11. So in that sense, it's a great card it trades evenly with, rank 1, it trades evenly with most rank 2s, and is also a great card to throw in front of things like Grimgaunt, as it's getting out of control, or the Steel Shaper decks. It's a great counter to a Steel Shaper deck for a Uteran. Because of the way it loves healing and regen, which can get back the health allow it to keep the attack power that it's gained from taking damage. So it's a great thing if you have Heart Tree or Mossbeard Patriarch. It's a great thing those are great cards to play with it. I'm personally looking forward to playing the card in Uteran Swarm decks, because those decks often don't have a lot of good blocking options, and this is a great blocking option. And moreover, it sticks on the field for several turns, which can then allow you to get out allow you then to draw the Echo Wisp Lifeblood or Echo Wisp Packmaster turn in a turn or two. Besides which, so it stays on the field for a long time. The thing to beware of with this card, don't play it onto an empty field unless you absolutely have to. Particularly if you're playing against Alolan decks. You do not want your opponent to play a Synapsis Oracle or a General or a Battle Tactician across from this thing. That card will just stick around forever, providing its buff, and it will take the Thundersoar forever to kill it. So avoid that at all costs if you possibly can. Otherwise, like I said, it's a good card to stick in a lot of decks. If you're playing a mono Utera Swarm deck, it's a great card to throw in there. Also note that it is one of the few cards that is difficult, it's almost impossible to Dreadbolt this thing, and it's even very difficult to cull it, assuming that you are playing it assuming that you're blocking with it initially. Like most things, if you're blocking, say, a 5/5 with your 0/12, that will immediately make it uncullable. So anyway, I think, does any of us have a comment? I think, Kit, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, actually, so I think that when we first see this card, I think it comes off by its very nature as a very fun card to play. So I imagine that, the first couple weeks we see this card, we're not gonna see its appeal in competitive play quite so clearly. I can't wait until we finally see it in a competitive deck. I just don't think it'll be there right away, like some other cards, like we didn't see a lot of Gargoyle right away, but then eventually it came in quite a force. But the other thing I wanted to say is this is one of the long string of Utera cards that isn't high power and toughness. Normally you see Utera be very strong, and only has a very few cards that are cull or witchable, and I think that's very interesting, and I want to echo your comment. If you want to level this card, discard it. Don't play it into an empty board. Don't play it into an empty lane. It is just always going to be better for you to discard it, unless your opponent is playing mono Tempest. So that's what I had.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's a great card to throw if your opponent has something on the offensive that you want to block. But yeah, if not, consider, like you said, discarding it if you really want to level it. But that being said, it has low enough depreciation, you don't have to level it. Tom, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah. So it's just really kind of interesting because I actually see this going into a lot of competitive decks like right out the gate. because I mean, this is the preview card that we've had for the longest period of time. So I think a lot of people have really had, the time to kind of mull over possible combos, at least with the current card pool. Obviously, we don't know all the changes and things that may or may not be happening. So it's always kind of tough to guess where it's going to go, but it is the one that we've had the longest time with. And at least as I've been talking to people in Steam chat and just kind of in general, about this particular card, I think a lot of people are really excited to try this card out in competitive decks. Specifically, a lot of people are thinking that Mono Utera is really going to make a strong comeback now that the Shaper changes are going to be kind of coming in, and we'll start to see that aggressiveness come in. And where I think a card like Thunderstorm fits into a deck like that, it's not normally a very aggressive card. Just because it does take some time. It requires, being damaged or some buffing before it can really actually do anything. Just the mere fact that it has breakthrough on it makes it a very interesting card. And a lot of times when you're playing other cards, you often don't want to block with them. You want to stick them into open lanes so that way you're getting your damage through, so that way, they are stuck blocking you instead. But Thundersoar can kind of be that corner case card where you can throw it in front of something to maybe mitigate some damage that you're taking, but still maintain a fairly large body when it comes out of it, and it's got the breakthrough, and so you still might be getting some damage. And so it makes a really great blocker in a deck where you normally don't like blocking. And so I kind of like that aspect of it going into a Mono Utera deck where normally you're not trying to block, you're trying to get into open lanes. Thundersword kind of allows you that option if you don't want to do it with something else, or you don't have a different card that you want to play instead. So I kind of like that aspect of it, and I think you might see it in a lot of those people, in a lot of the decks that people are trying to build towards Mono Utera.
Yeah, along those same lines, one of the banes of a Mono Utera Swarm deck in particular is Grimgaunt, and this is a card that you can use to defeat your opponent's Grimgaunt with fairly easily. Grimgaunt grows really fast if your opponent... My Grimgaunt will grow really fast if my opponent is playing a Swarm deck, but... on the other hand, I can throw one of these things in front of an 11-9 Grimgaunt and go to town. Okay, does anybody else have something they want to say?
Nope, I think we're all good.
Yeah, Thunderstorm is awesome.
Okay,
Coming into the Thunderdome!
Awesome. Then, Fox, I think you have Orion Justicar?
Yes, I do have Orion Justicar. That's at least how I say it.
Sure.
But, this card is actually really, really awesome. I like to call this card the Fun Police. He and Blightwalker get along real well. He is a 4/7, an 8/12, and then a 14/20, and his ability reads that whenever a creature an opponent controls enters the field, if it wasn't played from their hand, it gets -5 attack, -10 attack, and then -20 attack. So we have a counter that's proactive to cards like Phytobomb, Echo Wisp, Zymas the Undying. There's just tons of cards this interacts with. I think it's actually going to be played right at the outset, probably 3 ofs in nearly every single deck that we see, simply because people are sick of playing against Zymas. And so, we're going to see some meta shifts pretty significantly because of this card. And then, after a while, we'll finally figure out, how many of this card we actually want to play other than a 3 of, and, how that affects Zymas and a bunch of other things. And we'll see how that works. Notherian, what'd you want to say?
So I think this is really interesting because there aren't very many proactive counters in Soulforge, and I think this card is going to be really skill testing for competitive players. Most of the time when you put this in your deck, you're not putting it in because it is a vital piece of your strategy. You're putting it in as a sometimes play against your opponent, and knowing when to put a Justicar on the field and when to instead level something that is more important for your deck is going to be a really hard decision. It's going to require understanding the metagame, understanding what things your opponent is likely to play, and how well your deck can deal with what your opponent plays reactively, as opposed with regards to whether or not you need a proactive counter. So I think this is going to create some really interesting leveling decisions early game for competitive players, and I really look forward to what this is going to do for the tournament environment for that reason.
Yeah, proactive cards are really interesting, because throwing 1 or 2 of them into a deck is very low impact, as to like your overall strategy most of the time. And then, so a card like the Justicar, maybe you see your opponent is, let's just say, playing Necrium, and you go, okay, well, I can basically for free, level 1, put in this Justicar and say, do you really want to start leveling your Zemuses now? If you have them. Maybe you don't, but I can put it down and I can say, okay, I'm proactively saying that you do not want to level this card in your deck. And what does your opponent do? Does your opponent just play into it anyway and say, okay, I bet that I can play more Zemuses than your Justicar and like control your Justicars in the late game? Or do they say, I better play other cards in my deck instead? So maybe by playing like the one Justicar at the very beginning, you're able to completely change how an opponent plays their game and possibly even throw them off their game. And you don't even maybe necessarily need to play another Justicar again. You've got that, you put the one down, and now your opponent has to make that decision. So I love that we're starting to see more proactive answers in SoulForge, because now we're going to get to see more people in deck building, like maybe splitting up their strategies a little bit, going, okay, I know that there's this proactive answer for this thing and this proactive answer for this thing, so maybe I need to have 2 plans when I'm building my deck.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because at least for me, there are 2 major points for this card that make it very, very good to me. The first one being that it's not just Necrium that it stops pretty well in dead. It's Eutera. I think that's kind of the big highlight. It's the big thing that a lot of people have been talking about is, yes, it pretty much stops Zemus dead in its tracks, but there are so many cards that are also in Eutera that this just really, really hampers. So the Ether Hounds, your Echo Wisps, pretty much like any of these cards that are like sprouting seedlings, it just really kind of puts a big stop to those. So very, very good card to really kind of meta against 2 different factions. It's not really doing much against Tempest or Aloyan, but Necrium and Eutera, I mean, that's like half of the card pool, right? that you can really kind of meta heavily against as far as, getting against these factions. But the big thing that I like is that under leveled, this card is still very, very good. So if for whatever reason your opponent doesn't show his hand until, say, like very late into player level 1, a level 1 Justicar is still going to have a very big impact on the way that your opponent's going to be playing later on in the game, and at least kind of shifting the board. I mean, everybody has seen, what, negative attack kind of abilities or spells are able to do as far as like combat trades and changing the way that the board plays out. So even just having that -5 attack at a late point in the game can really change the way that somebody has to play things up. So I think even underleveled, or if you miss that opportunity to play that, 1 or 2 Justicar that you have in your deck, or if you just miss them completely, don't draw them, it's still a very good card to have late game. Because it's just, essentially when you need it, it's like an Electronet with creature body attached to it. So very, very nice to have at all points in the game, regardless of whether or not you've leveled it. And I really like that utility that you get out of the card.
Personally, I'm just really happy that we have cards that just by existing can change the meta. Like, I personally, in the Aloyan decks that I'm currently playing, don't think I'll be using this card unless we see like a dominant metagame shift back in the direction of Lyria, Progenitor, Zymus, things like that. But the fact that this card exists will change the tournament decks that we see for the Forge Watch Invitational. The fact that this card exists at Heroic will improve accessibility to counters, to cards that normally don't have strong counters. I mean, it's another card you can have other than Botanimate or Metasculpt that you might gain access before the other ones that you can start putting in your deck that deals with Zymus. I love the fact that this card exists simply just to affect and pressure the meta. So, I mean, that's the number one thing for me, is just seeing things like that happen. It's good to have the opposite end. Like, the fact that Zymus and Shapers exist right now means your deck has to be able to have a game plan against them. Cards like this means your deck has to be able to have an alternate win condition other than filling the board with Zymus.
Yeah. So, something to note here is that it does have a Badonkadonk, so it's one of Kit's favorite cards already. And our very next card also has a Badonkadonk. Salem has that. So, Salem, why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, no problem. So the card I'm going to be reviewing next is the Windborn Hellion, which was the first lower rarity card we got out of the set, and really showcased Stoneblade's commitment to giving lower rarity cards more complications or complicated abilities. And Windborn Hellion kind of gives us also this idea that maybe Hellion is going to be a cycle of cards in Tempest, since Rageborn Hellion is a very similar ability to it. So for those of you who don't know, I mean, you can see it on your screen. Every single time another creature you control moves, it gets buffed up. And similar to the way that creature is hitting your opponent, this kind of like gives you an aggressive strategy that you can apply. Since move is very aggressive, it's about moving your creatures out of the way and getting them into your opponent. And I think a card like this really helps shift towards a more aggressive deck strategy that can be possible. Because normally hitting your opponent and ignoring your opponent's creatures, right now, unless you have the aggressive Rageborn Hellion draw, it doesn't really work very well. But if you have this Windborn Hellion as an alternate to that very aggressive attacking, then you actually have a way of killing your opponent while also maybe getting behind the board, but being able to get them so low that you can just finish them off with maybe direct damage spells or other haste creatures, which I kind of really like. And I'm really glad they designed something like this, because the impact on draft this card has, since it is rare, something that you're going to see pretty often if you do draft into Tempest, it makes it so that you can take those common cards with move, and such as Ionic War Charger or even Wind Primordial, and those cards become higher picks now just because you have a card that can benefit from them. And I really like that.
Yeah, surprising, like, okay, Windborn Hellion also being a rare is pretty sweet because it's going to get the card into the hands of newer players and give them something awesome to build around. And I think that Windborn Hellion is actually a very strong card as far as creatures go. And so, like, I don't play the format much myself, but the unheroic format, I can see Windborn Hellion being like a big poster child for the unheroic format, as it's something that newer players will be drawn to and will hopefully help pull us away from the mostly armor creatures, mostly value creatures decks that seem to kind of dominate the unheroic format, and we can just say, look, here's a big creature and here's some more big creatures, and let's see if we can just rush in and crush it. It's going to be awesomely fun. So go ahead.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, because I played a lot of the heroic format when it was, especially when it's really popular, and a lot of the times it didn't really matter what kind of deck you were playing. The game was going to go pretty long unless somebody got an overly large creature advantage. Whereas this you can have that aggressive deck that could possibly match those types of decks. So yeah, you're perfectly right in that. And the unheroic format probably will benefit very much from this card being there, just making different decks that people can make now and different strategies. So. Now, the next card, I believe, is going to Kit, and this is also a really awesome card. Why don't you tell us about it, Kit?
All right, so I get Tarsus Deathweaver, which is probably my favorite card that's been spoiled so far. I really love playing off-the-wall fun decks. I was playing Rite of Grimgaunt on Darkheart Wanderers with Phytobombs. So, I mean, this kind of card is exactly the card I like to play for my fun decks. This is exactly the card that is appealable to people who just want to play fun, just starting out and just getting a few of the commons that work with it. But it's also a card that's going to get a lot of play, I believe, competitively. If you look at its stats, it's gigantic for a Necrium card, one of the best stats in the game for a Necrium card, and it's at all levels it's relevant, in addition to, allowing just absolutely blowout plays. You don't kill the progenitor that they play on the first turn, they follow it up with one or two of these, and suddenly you have a progenitor that can't be dreadbolted, can't be Botanimated, can't be killed by any level 1 creature, including Shardplate Mutant, a card specialized in killing level 1 and most level 2 creatures. Things get really, really out of hand. Suddenly your Phytobombs it's like you played a Roar when you play the Phytobomb. In fact, if you have a Roar, you're suddenly dealing with a board of 5/5s and a 7/8. I mean, the card just seems like it's going to allow a lot of really blowout plays, especially before people have learned to adapt to dealing with these kind of decks. It really, really, really excites me. But yeah, anyone else have any comments?
I would just like to note that this synergizes really, really well with Radron's favorite card. You know what card that is, Radron, right? Hunting Pack. That's right.
Oh my god, no. I was like, Gox? Flame Shaper Savant?
I do want to
Energy
say...
Surge?
I do want to say it was stolen from me the past couple times, but this card makes other Badonkadonks bigger. Alright, Sam, you had something to say?
Barring all that, I know a lot of people on the forums, there was a huge concern about them talking about how this kind of makes one of our earlier cards irrelevant, saying that this just goes over the top of Orient Justicar, and since this is and I don't really believe that is true. I believe that if someone's playing Orient Justicar and then another person is playing Tarsus Deathweaver, I believe still that Orient Justicar really comes out on top, considering you're trying to kill your opponent with these larger creatures, and Orient Justicar just really kind of shuts down even that strategy, even with Tarsus.
Mike, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I mean, I know we were joking before about Hunting Pack, but I mean, realistically, in like a draft environment, this is, if you can get a Deathweaver early on in your draft, it can make things like Ether Hounds or Hunting Pack, I mean, extremely valuable cards to pick. And so, I mean, just another way of thinking about the card, it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't think in constructed play we're ever going to see a lot of Hunting Packs, but in particular environments, in particular, especially where heroics, don't have a lot of heroics or legendaries running around, this can still be a reason. It can make those cards relevant.
I want to extrapolate on that and just say that both Windborn Hellion and Tarsus Deathweaver are rares that I would pick over the vast majority of heroics. I actually have a list that I've been working on of the existing card pool and where these new cards fit in, and like, there's maybe 6 heroics altogether that I would pick over either of these two cards. They're very exciting to me, and this is exactly what I want to see in a draft environment.
Yeah, even I would start picking up Hunting Packs if I had drafted the Deathweaver.
I think that's the symbol for the Mayan apocalypse. Anywho, Rayscar, you had a question for us?
Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting thing, and we're going to probably talk about this a little bit more going forward with some of these other preview cards that we've seen. But looking specifically at Tarsus Deathweaver, we're starting to see this trend of growth decks getting a lot more power added to them. And I'm kind of curious what the group here thinks about how this is going to affect people playing Epidemic going forward. Epidemic being, that card that a lot of people tend to think is like the best card in the game right now, or whatever, your opinion may be on that. Regardless, I think everybody thinks it's a very good card right now. But as we see a lot of these cards that are starting to give like across the board buffs, and especially certain particular types of decks getting, these ability to grow things really, really rapidly, do you see Epidemic becoming less relevant because it just can't do enough? What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think that one of the big problems with Epidemic is that people don't know how to play against it. For the longest time, I was running a deck that had not very high attack creatures at the beginning of the game. I was running Echo Wisps. And this is in a field where everyone is playing Epidemic. Like every match you're seeing Epidemic. And yet Epidemic was never a problem for me because they're playing Epidemic. Why are you blocking their creatures? All you're doing is setting up an Epidemic to be able to blow you out and get some very favorable trades. Why are you playing your Echo Wisp out into an open field when it's not getting any immediate value? You're going to get Epidemic. So playing your creatures into unopposed lanes, only playing your Echo Wisp when they're getting immediate value from blocking an attacking creature. With the buffing coming into, with all of this a focus on global buffing coming into the format, I think that Epidemic is still going to be a fine card until more people realize how to play around it. Because it's really not I'm going to play this card and hope they're going to have an Epidemic. No, you know that they have Epidemics. Stop playing into it. Try to set up board states where an Epidemic isn't going to do anything. So I think until people start learning how to play around Epidemic better, Epidemic is still going to be a very, very good card.
Just as kind of like an interim question here, though, back at you, Radrian. Do you think, though, that a lot of these growth cards are going to affect how people are playing Epidemic into the future, though?
I'm actually not sure. I'm not sure about that. I think that Epidemic versus like the large growth decks, it's kind of like it's always kind of like things are getting out of hand, and I need to take less damage and get some even trades here. So I think Epidemic can still be very good against these decks, especially since these global buffing decks try to fill the board. So therefore, there are a lot of targets for Epidemic all the time. So we might even see it being played more and more just because there are so many creatures coming out onto the field that you need something that can just hit everything and get things down to a manageable size.
Yeah, I mean, and two things. One is that, I mean, Deathweaver in particular does lessen the blow of Epidemic because it gets the buff as soon as the creature hits the field. So it means that to build on what Radrian was saying, it means you can be a little bit sloppier about when you play your Echo Wisp because like your Echo Wisp is immediately getting that buff and a level 1 Epidemic won't kill it anymore. But I think Radrian's last comment was absolutely on the money. Like, if I can get essentially a -10, -10 off of an Epidemic, or -15, -15 off of an Epidemic across the board, then it's still very valuable to play. Whether you're even if you're not killing anything. So,
I did. I really love your question, Racecar, and I think that's something that we'll probably make like a really big question in the next podcast. But I want to make sure that we get all the cards in here. So I'm sorry to cut that out, but I got another card for us to introduce, which is Witherfrost Banshee. Radrian, why don't you tell us about that?
Oh, the Witherfrost Banshee. All right, so this is a 3/3, 6/6, 12/12. It's pretty weak across the board, but its ability, when Witherfrost Banshee enters the field or moves into a lane, another creature gets -2 attack, -2 health, -4 attack, -4 health, and -7 attack, -7 health. So, what we have here is like, in my opinion, the slightly better Vengeful Spirit, because as soon as it hits the field, you're getting the negative attack, negative health right away, and it has a better body than Vengeful Spirit. I mean, the debuff is not quite as large, but just having it be immediate, is already puts it above Vengeful Spirit, in my opinion. And there are a lot of things that move creatures. So it's entirely likely that you would be able to get multiple procs off with the Witherfrost Banshee. I don't think that this is going to be format changing or anything, but I think that this card is actually good enough by itself that it will see some play. Nothurian, you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I just really liked the Vengeful Spirit over Witherfrost Banshee question, and I think the interesting thought exercise, which, none of us can work out quite yet because we don't fully know the format and all the other cards involved, but I think it's going to be a really interesting question. If you see a pack that has, in draft, that has both a Witherfrost Banshee and a Vengeful Spirit, what kind of decks want the Banshee and what kind of decks want the Witherfrost? And I imagine, if you've been taking a lot of Corpse Crawlers and Grave Packs, that your answer might be different than if you've been taking a bunch of Windcaller Shaman. But nonetheless, I think it's neat for a draft environment to have cards which are somewhat similar, but where certain cards will prefer card X and certain decks will prefer card Y, and there will be a lot of skill and practice involved in figuring out exactly which deck is which.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, and it's actually great that we're seeing more. I mean, as we've looked at the draft environment some, I think that pretty much universally people have been saying that Tempest is, feels kind of weak. So it's nice to see that in some of these other factions, we're seeing some cards that might actually push us towards Tempest. That being said, Nothurian, I know that you have a card that you wanted to talk about, another card that you wanted to talk about. Tell us about your card.
Yeah, so the card that I wanted to talk about is the most aggressive card that we have seen previewed so far, which is Scythian Infiltrator. And I always like playing the most aggressive deck that I can get away with. Sorry. The most aggressive deck my opponents will let me get away with. And so I'm really excited to see another aggressive card added to the Aloyan arsenal. First of all, the fact that it has 6 attack power at level 1 is a huge impact for the card. I've actually been known to stick some Volt. What is that? What is that 6/3?
Volt Technician?
Volt Technician, thank you. I don't know the name of it, but I stick it in my deck sometimes because it's useful to have a 6 power for Volt Technician. It's 6 power attack power, 12 attack power for blocking, just to be able to toss it in front of something big and get the trade. And so I think a lot of Aloyan decks, even Aloyan decks that aren't especially aggressive, are going to consider tossing in a couple of infiltrators, because even if you don't level the card, it provides you with a decent blocker that you can use mid-game when your opponent has a 6 health creature, and there aren't very many Aloyan cards that fit that bill. On the other side of the coin, I mean, I think where it's really going to shine, of course, is in aggressive decks. I think that there's actually a relatively aggressive Hinterland Watchman deck that we're going to see emerge in the format now that Hinterland Watchman is fixed in the next patch. I think that either perhaps with Utera growth cards like Roar, perhaps even with Tempest cards, maybe a Scythian Infiltrator Hinterland Watchman deck might actually use Primordial Surge, a card that exists in the set but may not have seen much play over the past few months. So I think that a relatively aggressive Hinterland Watchman deck is the deck to watch, and I also think that especially in like a draft environment, being able to toss a Primordial Slam onto your Scythian Infiltrator to win the game is going to create some exciting moments.
I'm just curious, who's going to watch the Watchmen? But in seriousness, back during the very first tournament that Forge Watch did, the only one that I actually got to play in that was a single-player tournament, I played Mono Utera there that specialized in breakthrough cards, and this card just straight up makes me want to play this over Avatar. I really want to play this and Battle Tactician and General, and just hard to deal with cards that just slam damage through, and it makes me really excited. But also, what I really like from what I've seen so far is they're slowly bringing up the faction's weaknesses. They didn't introduce them all in the first set, but now with this expansion, like, you're seeing Nekrium get a stronger card that has the ability to interact with things. You're seeing Aloyan get a playable card with 6 power, which lets it trade with things. Like, one of the biggest weaknesses, in my perspective from Aloyan, was the fact that it couldn't kill a Phoenix. That it just had no level 1 cards that were able to trade with Phoenix. It had no level 1 cards that were able to trade with Shapers. So it's really exciting for me to see that.
Hey, are you calling my Volt Technicians unplayable?
I would never say that to your face.
They're unplayable.
Fox, you have a comment?
I also think that this card is going to be probably a bomb in draft. Like, it's really good. We've already seen with the simulations that we've done with the draft sim that buffing a single good threat that's hard to deal with is already pretty good. I mean, drafting a battle droid with some enrages and some grove huntresses seems really good, and you pick this guy up, you go into Utera, you get some enrages, you get Matrix Warden, you get grove huntress. He's already got a good body, and he's just going to deal tons of damage and create favorable trades for you. So I think this card's going to be awesome in Limited.
All right. Well, sounds like everybody said their piece. Racecar, you got a new Terra card that Fox spoiled this week. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think it's actually really exciting. This is the Weirwood Patriarch, and it kind of follows in a similar vein to what a lot of people look at Lifeblood Dryad for, but it's very, very different, and it plays out very differently too, and I think it's a very important distinction. So you look at it, and it gives buffs to what people would normally consider relatively small creatures, creatures with 3, 5, or 7 attack or less, depending on the level, and it gives them a buff when it comes into play. I think probably key things to note about this, since we can make some direct comparisons to something like Lifeblood Dryad, which, performs a similar function, is that at least to me, even with the buff that Lifeblood Dryad could potentially give itself, Weirwood Patriarch comes out the gate with better stats. Just kind of overall, if you add up the attack and the health that it gets, it's going to beat that buff that Lifeblood Dryad could even give itself and the end stats that it would have. So I think that's a really, really important thing. The other really important part of this is that it doesn't have to have the board full in order to actually do some of its abilities. There are other things that Lifeblood Dryad does a little bit better in that, what was I going to say there? Oh, I don't know. But anyway, there are some things that Lifeblood Dryad does do better than the Patriarch, but I actually find that if I had to choose between the two, if I, for whatever reason, only had one slot left in my deck for one or the other, I would probably more often pick the Patriarch, because I feel like in a lot of the decks where you're trying to do board fill, especially if it's like a Phytobomb-oriented deck, Weirwood Patriarch is actually going to give you a lot more benefit than Lifeblood Dryad would. But that's also a really silly thing, because, if you are making a Phytobomb deck, there's no way that you wouldn't play both of these in the same deck. So I think it's really important to note that in this case, it's not a one or the other kind of a situation. It's definitely like decks that are going to benefit from one are probably going to benefit from the other. And this kind of goes back to that earlier question that I had of, a lot of these growth decks that are going to be showing up. You're going to see board fill growth decks definitely coming. And I think with that, I should probably turn the time over to Fox to talk more about this card, because this is pretty much like his card if there ever was one. So go ahead and take it, Fox.
Oh my gosh, you have no idea. Actually, you probably do, but that's okay. Like, this card synergizes with so many cards that I love. Like, you're going to see Aether Hounds getting hit by this. You're going to see Phytobomb getting hit by this. Wildwood Sower and all of its tokens will get hit by this. It's just really, really strong. And, playing this with 3 Lifeblood Dryads, 3 Patriarchs, and 3 Roars, you're always going to be able to buff your team out of Epidemic range almost immediately. Something important, really important to note here, is that this is a buff of 2 at level 1 instead of just 1 as Lifeblood Dryad is. So if you play this, after a Phytobomb, this actually brings it out of Epidemic range, so that all that Epidemic does is causes the board to trade. It doesn't actually give them an advantage. And I think that's something that's really important. I really, really, really like this card, and I cannot wait to play it.
Sorry, I had my mic off. My bad.
Oh.
I actually want to say that the difference between 1 attack and 1 health and 2 attack and 2 health, if some of us people who have been playing since near the beginning can remember way back to when Ferocious Roar gave +1/+1.
You mean when it was unplayable?
Right, when it was unplayable. So the difference between 1 and 2 health and attack is just huge. This is going to be a great card for both constructed and excellent in draft. But we have another card that I actually am writing the preview for, Woebringer. It's a Necrium legendary, and I'm fumbling around trying to bring it up because I still don't have it memorized. It is a 6/5. Oh my gosh, where is my list? I'm sorry, guys. It is a 6/5, 10/9, 18/7, and its ability at level 1 and 2. At the start of your turn, the creature on the field with the lowest attack gets sacrificed. Yeah, this is a legendary. But the creature with the lowest attack gets sacrificed. It has 6, 10, and then 18 power, and at level 3, it's a creature that your opponent controls with the lowest power gets sacrificed. Like, this is big and splashy and awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this card. I mean, especially after you see the Palladium Pulse Mage changes, and you see Orion Justicar. It makes me really wonder if we're going to see a Gloom Reaper Gloomheart Witch deck. I think that it's Gloom Reaper. Sorry, it just makes me really, really excited. And going back to my Tarsus Deathweaver comment, this is the biggest card that we've seen in Necreum, and beyond that, it's also one of the biggest cards that we see at the levels period. It's just a really nice addition to the faction, and I think the fact that at levels 1 and 2 it can hit your own cards might actually make this more detrimental than, say, Taliesin is, but it also could be really good. I mean, I can see an intelligent decision as an opponent of this card to not play any creatures or just discard them so the card kills itself. Or setting things up so that, my opponent's blank card, X dies. But the last thing I want to mention is this card's an abomination. And I think that is absolutely crucial. I really think that abominations are going to be going way up in popularity in the new patch, seeing this card. But that said, Racecar, you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, well, it kind of goes a little bit along with what you were saying there, but I think the sheer fact that this card affects your opponent's play choices makes a huge deal, because if you have, if you first play Woebringer on, that very first turn, it's your only card that you've played, and, it's just sitting there, your opponent suddenly has to go, oh crap, now what can I play? And I think just that, right out the gate kind of effect that it has to be able to change what your opponent's doing is just unbelievably good. And that's not in talking about the stats that we've already mentioned, and not talking about how awesome the level 3 ability is. Just right out of the gate, turn 1, your only play, Woebringer right out on the field, just can completely wreck an opponent's strategy and how they're going to play things out.
So with that said, we'll go to the last card we have, our spoiler. This card makes me very excited, as my namesake deck, Kitfinity, is all about leveling 15 plus cards during player level 1, leveling your entire deck almost during player level 2, and just going an infinite combo in player level 3 because you leveled so many of these cards. This card works insane with Master of Elements, making it a better Technosmith. If that hasn't given you a hint of what this card is, I will just spell it out for you. Our preview card is Metasight. This is a spell that at level 1 and 2 does exactly the same thing. The first card of its kind. You discard 2 additional cards and level them when you play this card. I cannot wait to play this alongside Master of Elements and just have a 9/9 Technosmith that leveled 4 cards. Yes? Master of Elements, this card, and then 2 other cards. You essentially leveled your whole hand, and that makes me really excited. Maybe I'm just, that combo player that likes playing bad cards, but it makes me really happy. At level 3, this card becomes free. Totally unnecessary, but how could they make this card have a level 3 ability without making it free? What, discard your whole hand and level it? I don't know. I'm very excited to play this card, both in Kitfinity and now a new deck that I'm brewing with Master of Elements. This is my favorite card that's been printed, period, bar none. Nothing else comes close. Anybody who has a comment, you're welcome to chip in now. I'd like to hear from all of you.
So my first comment is there's a certain category of, quote, bomb decks built around Titan or Dragon or Krogaius. We haven't seen a lot of those in competitive play. I am very curious to see if this card is good enough to make Scorchbane Dragon decks, or probably not Krogaius decks because it's, although maybe, or definitely Titan decks, a little bit more viable in competitive play. I agree with Kit that the card seems strong, but I'm kind of interested to see how it affects the rest of the metagame.
So, I'll put in the opposing opinion, which is that this is a card for people who thought the problem with Technosmith is that the body was too relevant early game. So, as somebody who has trouble playing 4/4s early game, much less 2/2s, I have a hard time. I have a hard time imagining how this card would fit into any of my decks. I think that I like having the card in the environment I think that this is a card that can punish your opponent for not playing aggressively, and I love to see cards that punish your opponent for not playing aggressively. But the flip side is that if your opponent is playing aggressively, good players are going to have to know when to audible out of this card and play something else instead. And so, in general, it's going to be a really... I think a lot of new players are going to get this card wrong. They're going to play this card when their opponent's putting some pressure on them, and they're going to get blown out early. And again, as others have said, it's good. This card will surely have a role in the competitive metagame, but I think it's a little bit of a trap card for new players.
I'm kind of agree with that, and one of the things that like you mentioned, like playing a Technosmith into something like a Grimgaunt Predator, where it just grows out of control when a creature dies in front of it, it's really hard for you to, and also the other card that levels up cards, Synopsis Oracle, just they're punished so much. Your opponent can punish those creatures so much with things like Grimgaunt Predator or creatures that grow out of control, since those creatures can't actually compete. And so having a card like this, where you can play it and not have to worry about putting a creature down on the field that might actually be detrimental for your own side, like making you lose the game earlier, I think is really cool. And I think the upside of this card, being able to level that many cards, really, really takes you out of the ballpark of having those like mid-game hands that really can make you flounder. You can level up some cards that actually can bring you back into the game again, and I really like that.
Yeah, I think this card is actually really, really insane. Especially the fact that it's sitting at common. It's going to be really easy for newer players to pick up. It's going to be easy for players to experiment with. And I think it's actually going to be pretty interesting and constructed in also, say, a Mono Aloyan deck. Say you've got a pretty good board presence. You can go, Avatar, and then your second play for the turn is level 3 other cards in your hand. That seems really good to me, and I think that, there's going to be a lot of different ways to use this. Probably the best way, in my opinion, will probably be what Kit was saying with Master of Elements. But I think this is a very good card, and depending on the board state, you can get massive advantages in the next player level just by playing this one card.
So I have to kind of go back to what Notharian was saying. I am not a very big fan of this card, but that probably has more to do with my playstyle and less to do with maybe how good or bad this particular card is. I look at this particular card and see it as a later game type of card, and I tend towards aggro to mid-range type decks that are really trying to get the job done in players level 1 and 2. And this card it doesn't do that. It falls terribly flat to something like that. I can see some benefit to it, but I feel like the fact that the level 1 and 2 versions are exactly the same, there's no real progression in there, there's no real advantage into getting that leveling up. It's just a hard card for me to want to play with, even to build around. But there are definitely decks that can take advantage of it. I just probably wouldn't be caught dead ever playing any of those decks because I'm just terrible with them. I have a really hard time playing like Krogius Bomb decks or anything that's really trying to, last long enough in the players level 3 and 4 to get, the job done. I'm not as big of a fan of those decks. They just tend to get a little bit too unreliable for me. I will lose too early or whatever the case is. So I'm a little hesitant to ever want to actually play with this card. I don't see the advantage in it personally.
It's okay, Racecar. We forgive you. We forgive you.
Oh, well, I do have to say one thing. This card is like the plastic surgeon of the SoulForge world because, behind the scenes, it's making everything you play with its badonkadonk bigger. I'm sorry, I had to get one in, guys. But
wow.
that said, I had to say it. But I think this card also is a really good one of to pick up in draft. I think with the fact that this is common is going to make it relatively easy to pick up. I can't imagine anyone wanting 3 or 4 of these in draft. I certainly wouldn't. And I love the card. But I think it's a really great card to pick up one for those times that you're either at parity on board, or you have like a bunch of spells in your hands that you don't necessarily need to play. It's just a really great way to get your bombs leveled up and still stay relevant. But I agree with both what Racecar and Notherian said. I mean, the card is trading board presence for late game strength, and I think that in the current meta, it's really easy to do that during player level 1. Whatever the meta shapes up after this patch will completely change my mind on the card. Maybe things are really aggressive, and there won't be any decks that you can play this card against level 1. But I think right now, like, the only deck that I would be scared to play this against in player level 1 is Drawforged, and I think that there's currently a bunch of opportunities against that deck when they're not playing avatars, and maybe they drop a Gox, or maybe they drop a Brightsteel Gargoyle that can only hit once every other turn. I think those are great turns to be able to use this to accelerate some late game advantage. That said, it's clearly not a card that you want to play every game, and there's some games that you're just going to hate every time you draw it. But I think that's what makes the card an interesting decision and what makes me really excited about it. The fact that there can be such polarized opinions on it, and I don't think either are wrong. But that said, Fox, why don't you take us out?
All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching this edition of Spoiler Level 4, where we bring you to the next level. And, everybody just say goodbye, and we will see you all later.
Have a good one, guys.
See you later.
Yep, bye.
Take care.